would include Richard Burr, the head of the Intelligence Committee, and it also would include Senator Kelly Loeffler. And so the question is whether or not they should be investigated for that behavior.
Well, it also includes Dianne Feinstein, a Democrat. You didn't mention her name. Why didn't you mention her name? And I think she's a very honorable person, by the way. So I'm not saying, but you know, it's interesting that you mention two people, but you don't mention one that happens to be a Democrat.
Any senator, should they be
I don't know, because I'd have to look at it, possibly, but I find them to be honorable people, yeah.
Welcome to another episode with All for Synchronicity. How often in society do we find lip service being provided by politicians, politards, these fake idols? How many times in history do we have to see a reoccurrence of events and people knowing the head of time the unfolding events which are around us? Is this coincidence? Are you still believing in such things? Do you know the Morgan family made themselves wealthy because they knew the future, or rather, they had been told things before others? 1929. Just investigate JP Morgan and how they became wealthy. Back in 2017, the banks left the fiat currency. Catherine Austin Fitts has been speaking about these truths for years. And if you go to Solaris.com, you can keep up to date with the truths behind the missing 21 trillion. Here's us now being given more chaos, which will allow them to print unimaginable amounts of money, turn on specific laws which take away things from more people blindly, and allow the influence of their own wishes, their own intentions. And I give you one example. Here's the UK going into a fake lockdown for the pandemic, and their excuse they're saying is they're locking people down so that they can reduce a potential wave that hits the NHS. And meanwhile, they've told all NHS staff to reduce the occupancy of the beds. So really there is no actual issue. It's a preempted, planned strike of an issue.
As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump. How bad is it, Secretary Van Houten?
Oh, come on!
As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump. How bad is it, Secretary Van Houten? We're broke. The country is broke.
Excellent.
Do you believe your government are part of the puppets, tools, or do you believe that your government are the puppeteers? And with this thought in mind, would they be part of the orchestration of problems? And just looking back in society, consider the implications. I mean, here we are since the 90s. We've had continual chaos. I mean, you go back, you could find an interview with Donald Trump speaking about the economy in 92 collapsing over there in regards to real estate and the issues and their governments. And if you look here in the UK, you could find similar patterns through time. And then once again, you take it up to 2000, you've got the 9/11 disaster, you've got this cause of chaos. And then you play it into 2008-7, you've got that second round of bank chaos, which we're living and looking at now, which is more invented chaos by the puppeteers. And we're asking the big question, who is the puppeteer here? So are you watching puppets or puppeteers? And if this is the planned effort, continual chaos by the puppeteers, which it looks like. I mean, going back that 20 years I've just spoke about, simple, chaotic events. Here we are in the year 2020. And we've had the likes of royals speaking about wanting to come back as reincarnated parasites. We've had royals speaking about overpopulation. I mean, have they even read the Bible? Go forth and multiply? Aren't these meant to be the people at the head of your church? The people that we follow because of their great wisdom? Or are these people blind leaders walking blindly towards a ditch? You have to ask these questions.
Many of the companies lining up for a handout from the federal government aren't victims of coronavirus at all. It's their own fault. It's poor judgment. Several senators are in trouble after it was revealed that they sold off millions in stock after clearly being warned about the looming pandemic all the way back in January. This might, if I'm to vote ugly story of the day, this is it. This is where you had Feinstein. It's Democrats and Republicans. You had Feinstein, you have Richard Burr, you had Kelly Loeffler. Pick it up from there, and we'll fill this in.
Yeah, Inhofe is in there too.
Yeah.
But it's really disgusting because all of these senators were sitting there in that meeting back in January. The public didn't even know this thing existed back then. They're told, here's the thing, this is going to hit the United States. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be bad for the economy. So these 5 people, at least that we know of, left that meeting, made some phone calls, and started dumping all their stock because they knew what was about to happen. And actually, as of Monday, Burr has now been hit with a securities fraud lawsuit over his role. I hope we see more than this. And it can't just be we're suing you for money. There has to be criminal charges because Loeffler, she's the worst of all because not only did she sell her stock, but she also purchased stock in telecommunications companies that would benefit from people having to work from home.
Okay.
She knew what was coming.
Yeah, and here's the point to all this. The point is that we're talking about January. We're talking about January 24th when the information starts disseminating. What I thought was most interesting is Burr asked for top secret meetings from the Health and Education Committee, and so these top secret meetings take place. The next thing you know, within a month, within a matter of actually 2 weeks, he's out getting rid of stock. Now, the Loeffler story is even more intriguing and more disgusting because Loeffler's hubby runs the New York Stock Exchange. He's the guy in charge of New York Stock Exchange. And so she says, well, gee whiz, he didn't have anything to do with this. I didn't have anything to do with selling any of this. This was our advisor, our financial advisor. No, it's just not sellable, is it?
No, absolutely not. It's very clear what happened. She, the richest member of the Senate, by the way, over $500 million in net worth, probably goes home or even after the meeting makes a call to Jeff Sprecher, who is the CEO of the Intercontinental Exchange, which owns the New York Stock Exchange, and says, listen, bad things on the horizon. So in this same time frame where she's dumping stock and Burr and Feinstein are dumping stock, Sprecher starts dumping stock. Millions of dollars worth of stocks.
$15 million.
Right. And so he saves money. He saves the ICE, Intercontinental Exchange, money. Mm-hmm. And there is no way that he just has such good timing that he knew to do that. No, his wife was on the committee. She was warned. This is full-blown criminal activity at the head of the New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah.
Give me control of a nation's money, and I care not who makes its laws. So who really controls the Federal Reserve? And on that same question, why is all the legislation in English countries the same legislations, laws that were originating from England? Are they all the same nation? Are they falsely in belief they are an individual nation? Or are they actually learning who their puppeteer is? Here's this shutdown from Boris Johnson on March 23rd to reduce the expected flux that would come to the nation's NHS. And when will this ever arrive? Is this engineered to make people comply with laws? And we know that how blindly people walk off and follow these So, delving deeper into historical documents, back in 1903, the Royal Coat of Arms was posted in several of the Jewish encyclopedias, and we've extracted a page here which demonstrates the Rothschilds' shield that they used to put on front of their shop back in their original days when they were devising usury. And in this next snippet you can see how that the shield is continued into Queen Elizabeth II's. Some snippets from interviews that we've had with these royal families, and I've put them together here to demonstrate some interesting information.
Colossal increase in the human population. It's one of the living species of the planet, but it's reaching plague proportions.
Royal Highness Prince Charles, who can trace his ancestry back to Romania's dark and distant past.
The genealogy shows that I'm descended from Vlad the Impaler, you see. So I do have a bit of a stake in the country.
What do you see as the biggest challenges in conservation?
The growing human population. Because where we are, there's nothing else.
And do you have views about what should be done about that?
Not your guess.
Well, it could be on a spectrum from mass sterilisation to greater availability of contraception. I don't know what your views are as to what can be done about it.
Well, I think it might be described as voluntary family limitation.
According to a report in WorldNet Daily, some of the richest men and women in the world met secretly in New York recently. When the world's wealthiest individuals hold secret meetings, it's time to pay attention. In 1910, the 6 wealthiest men in the world met at Jekyll Island, Georgia. That meeting resulted in the creation, 3 years later, of the largest criminal enterprise ever devised, the Federal Reserve, so-called. Judging from the list of participants, the recent meeting in New York may result in something even more monumental. The London Times identified them as Bill Gates, David Rockefeller, Ted Turner, Oprah Winfrey, Warren Buffett, George Soros, and New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg. Based on the Forbes magazine list of billionaires, the room had a net worth of about $120 billion. With all the bailout figures we've heard recently, that doesn't sound like that much. Believe me, it is. $120 billion is about equal to the annual budget for all of New York State, from New York City to Buffalo and everything in between. The meeting, which took place in early May, was at the home of Sir Paul Nurse, a British Nobel Prize-winning biochemist and president of Rockefeller University. Microsoft's founder, Bill Gates, called the meeting. The London Times reported the informal afternoon session was so discreet that some of the billionaire's aides were told they were at security briefings. Discreet is the British way of saying secret. I do not believe that it is coincidental that this meeting came only a couple of weeks after another super secret and more powerful group met in the secrecy in Greece, the Bilderberg Group. They have advocated a one-world government for at least a century. They also see themselves as the elite saviors of mankind. According to the Times, the billionaires were each given 15 minutes to present their favorite cause. Over dinner, they discussed how they might settle on an umbrella cause that could harness their interests. Taking their cue from Gates, the report said they agreed that population control was the #1 issue. Experts say the global population will top 7 billion in 2012. According to reports at the meeting, Bill Gates outlined a plan to cap the global population at 8.3 billion. It all sounds so civilized, doesn't it? Here's the less politically correct but more accurate version. A group of unelected liberals with more money than many governments have just decided how many people will be permitted to live. This group of self-appointed governors will now have to draw up criteria to be used to decide who will not be permitted to live and how they will die. It can and will be dressed up in polite and civil terms, but in the end, it means certain people will have to die. The meeting was billed as a meeting of philanthropists wanting to do good. But one can put lipstick and pearls on a pig, and it'll still be a pig. In the final analysis, there's only one way to cap a population, by deciding who's permitted to live and who, for the good of all, must die.
This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to 0, and that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to 0. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to 0. That's back from high school algebra. But let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, health care, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. But there we see an increase of about 1.3.
This, of course, is the New York Times. This is dated Sunday, October the 6th, 1940. There's an article on page 10 that I want to show you. There you go. New York Times, October the 6th, 1940. Page 10. And the article is called New World Order, Pledge to Jews. Give a look at the article. Arthur Greenwood, member without portfolio in the British War Cabinet, assured the Jews of the United States that when victory was achieved, an effort would be made to found a new world order based on the ideals of justice and peace. Arthur Greenwood, who was a deputy leader of the British Labour Party. Give a look at the rest of the article. New World Order Forecast. When we have achieved victory, as we assuredly shall, the nations will have the opportunity of establishing a new world order. There you go. New World Order, Pledge to Jews. New York Times, October the 6th, 1940.
Blind leaders leading the blind, together walking in the ditch. How can this be true? What if God, Lord of creation, gave a test to a nation, or many nations? Would that test be of faith? Would the test be of an economic issue? Would the test be of some scientific significance or scientific attributes? World economy in 2009 was beyond the control of the puppeteer because there were too many minor issues, from protesting to building infrastructure which was no use to the mass population, such as weapons of mass destructions, deep underground military bases, many other military things which was no use to anyone whatsoever, including submarines. So here we are, 2020. They've lost control. They have had to implement controls beyond our perspectives. What could the puppeteer do to resolve those issues? Is there any way they could continue to collapse without it becoming obvious to the mass population? What about causing another distraction? One that removes people from protesting? Is this possible? What if the puppeteers could engineer an event that solved that issues, what would that be? Would the solution be an alien invasion, an economic collapse, an instruction for people to stay at home? Truths about technology? Who knows? Do you think those that have wealth want to help the mass populations? Do you think they want to share their wealth wider than their friends, family, the ones they know, love, and dear to them? I know I'm asking a lot of questions, perhaps suggesting the mass population ask them instead of me. In these challenging times, many that believe they are awakened are falling into the ditch. These times we are witnessing are times we need to bless others, heal the sick, unite with the divine source. Sadly, we are not seeing anyone stand up to the altar and deliver truth, true faith in the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, the God of God, the divine source of all things. Instead, we watch the masses fall into the ditch, believing in their false scientific information, watching leaders rally around CEO corporations and private entities to solve problems of faithless people. Are you really witnessing this? How many of you are awake? One thing's for sure, most of those that have gotten to the top of a corporation or a nation are blind. Look at what the English royals have just done. The defender of the faith has handed her powers over to the Minister of Crown. And no longer is the Queen any power. And how is it a fake disaster? Well, annually, you watch about 600,000 people die from heart disease. And so far, this strand of whatever they want to call it has only killed about 40,000 people. And they're still pumping it out more than any other news ever seen since 9/11. Are you awake yet? Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. We'll look forward to sharing future episodes. Have episodes in the works for Freemasons, occults, a few other things, symbolisms to follow in the near future. Some of them we're working out whether we should post on particular platforms, as some platforms have got their own rules. Okay, thank you, blessings. Stay safe.